I spent most of my life keeping quiet about the truth, quiet about what I earned, quiet about what I owned, quiet about the choices I made when my son was still young enough to look at me with trust instead of calculation. And for years, that silence felt harmless, even noble. I always believed that if I lived simply, he'd grow into a man who valued character over comfort, effort over entitlement. But life has a way of showing you who people really are when they think you have nothing to give them. It was a cold morning in early November when my phone buzzed against the chipped countertop of my tiny kitchenette. I'd just poured myself a cup of coffee, instant, the same brand I'd used for over a decade, when I saw my son's name on the screen. Aaron. A name I once thought sounded strong. Solid, I answered. Aaron? His voice came through distracted, like he was juggling another conversation in the background. Yeah, Dad, listen. Selena's parents are hosting dinner this Thursday. They want you to come. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. I took a slow breath. Dinner? That's kind of them. A pause. Aaron hadn't expected me to agree so easily. Right. Good. It's at 6. Don't worry about bringing anything. I heard voices behind him. A woman's laugh. Dishes clinking. And then another voice, sharper, low, but unmistakably mocking. Just remind him not to embarrass us, or show up in that ragged coat. Selena, my daughter-in-law. Aaron didn't correct her, didn't defend me. He just kept talking like nothing had been said. Anyway, Dad, it's in Alder Ridge. Nice neighborhood. Maybe park a block or two away so the driveway doesn't look crowded. Alder Ridge. High-end suburb outside Spokane. Big houses, big driveways, residents who drove cars that cost more than most people earned in a year. I stared at the worn laminate of my countertop. I'll be there, I said evenly. He hung up without a goodbye. The apartment settled into its familiar quiet, a place I'd lived intentionally. One bedroom, sparse furniture, everything chosen to look like a man scraping by. Not because I had to, but because I'd decided nearly 2 decades earlier that I didn't want my son growing up cushioned by wealth he didn't earn. I'd worked for the Northwest Compliance Bureau as a senior investigations officer for over 30 years. My income wasn't loud, but it was steady. Over $4 million accumulated through salary, bonuses, and investments. And while Aaron had lived under the assumption that I scraped by on some modest pension, I'd built a portfolio that could have bought his entire neighborhood outright, but I never told him, never told anyone. I had convinced myself that choosing modesty would teach him discipline, humility, gratitude, and for a while, when he was small, I saw glimmers of those traits. But adulthood changed him. Selena changed him. Comfort changed him. I walked to the small bookshelf in the corner and pulled down a picture frame. Aaron at age 8, missing front teeth, holding a model rocket we built together. On the back, in smudged marker, he'd written, "Best dad ever." I touched the corner of the frame, remembering a time when he meant that, when my frayed jackets and dented thermos didn't bother him, when he saw me as someone worthy, not someone who lowered his image. But that boy was gone. I went to my closet and scanned the 2 sections of my life. The real suits, tailored sharp, meant for conference rooms and federal hearings, and the clothes I wore around Aaron, thrift store jackets and washed-out slacks meant to signal a life lived in restraints. If I was going to this dinner, I needed to appear exactly the way they assumed I was. Nothing to offer, nothing to show, nothing to take pride in. I reached for the oldest jacket I owned, a faded brown one with a mismatched button and a frayed inner seam. A jacket Aaron had once asked me not to wear when meeting his friends. Perfect. Thursday would reveal the truth, not about me, but about them. But I had no idea that stepping into their house in that worn-out coat would expose something far darker than disrespect. Something that would change every decision I made afterward. Thursday arrived colder than I expected. The kind of cold that settles deep into the fabric of your clothes. I chose that old brown jacket again, brushing a stray thread from the sleeve, then slipped into the same scuffed shoes I'd worn for nearly a decade. They weren't uncomfortable, they were simply invisible, just like I needed to be. The drive from my apartment to Alder Ridge took nearly 40 minutes, winding through industrial blocks, then clean, wide boulevards, and then into streets lined with houses built to impress. As I turned into their neighborhood, the pavement smoothed out so perfectly it almost gleamed. Lawns trimmed like carpets. Porches staged like catalog photos. It was a world Iran wanted to belong to more than he ever wanted to belong to mine. Per his suggestion, I parked 2 blocks away under a flickering street lamp, my old sedan looking wildly out of place among polished SUVs and imported German engines. I took a breath, grabbed the small bakery box I'd brought, not expensive but thoughtful, and began the walk toward the house. A tall figure stepped into the doorway before I reached it. Aaron. He scanned me from collar to shoes in a quick, involuntary sweep. His expression twitched, embarrassment attempting to hide behind a smile. "There you are," he said, stepping aside. "Come in before the cold follows you." Inside, warmth hit my face immediately. Their home, not theirs of course, but Selena's parents', was expansive, bright, and strategically arranged to display both wealth and taste. Sculptures that had never been touched. Rugs no one walked on. A chandelier that probably cost more than what they thought I earned in a year. Selena's father appeared first. His name was Rowan Leclerc, a tall, silver-haired man with an air of constant appraisal. Every glance he offered felt like it carried a dollar sign behind it. "Well," Rowan said, extending a hand that felt more like a formality than a greeting. "Aaron's told us so much about you." I forced a polite smile. "I brought a small dessert, just something simple." I placed the bakery box on the side table. Selena drifted in next, wearing a gown far too formal for a family dinner. Her smile stretched thin. "Oh, you didn't have to bring anything, really." Her tone suggested she meant you couldn't have brought anything worth serving anyway. Across the room I noticed her mother, Teresa, whisper something into her ear. Both glanced at me with a tilt of pity, or annoyance, I couldn't tell which. We moved into the lounge where an expensive-smelling candle masked the truth of the room, that it wasn't lived in, only displayed. They offered drinks. Rowan poured himself a deep amber scotch before asking, "And for you? Something light, perhaps?" "I'll have water," I said. Selena nodded quickly, already anticipating that answer. Conversation drifted around me. Vacation plans, business deals, someone's new investment property in Sandpoint. They floated the conversation above my reach intentionally, as if expecting me to smile along like a confused tourist. Rowan leaned back in his leather seat. "Aaron tells us you work. Where is it again?" "The Northwest Compliance Bureau." He nodded slowly. "Government work, right? Modest income, I suppose. Respectable in its own way." I took a sip of water. "It keeps me busy." Teresa folded her napkin neatly on her lap. "Aaron mentioned your living situation. A small apartment downtown, wasn't it? It's admirable when people keep things simple. Admirable. The polite cousin of pitiful." Aaron shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Dinner was served at a table long enough to seat 12, though only 5 chairs were used, and mine was the flimsy fold-out tucked slightly away from the others. The catered dishes smelled wonderful, but the atmosphere drained any appetite I might have had. Halfway through the meal, Rowan mentioned casually, "Aaron and Selena found a house they love in North Alder. Beautiful place. But the down payment is—" He waved his fork. "A stretch." Selena sighed dramatically. "We're short about $140,000. My parents are considering helping, but, well, we thought we'd ask if Aaron's side could contribute a little." A hush settled over the table. Aaron stared at his plate. Selena stared at me. Teresa stared with something between curiosity and judgment. Rowan smiled, slow and expectant. "Surely you could chip in. Just a little? Family should support family." I set my fork down, aware of how intentionally they'd cornered me. "They didn't ask if I wanted to help. They assumed I couldn't help." "I'm afraid that's not possible," I said calmly. Selena whispered just loud enough, "Of course it isn't." The rest of the dinner passed with lukewarm politeness. Cold shoulders, dismissive smiles. No one asked how I got home. No one lingered at the door. Aaron offered a stiff, "Good night, Dad," then shut the door behind me like he couldn't wait to return to their world. The walk back to my sedan felt longer than it should have, colder. The box of dessert remained untouched, exactly as I'd expected. But as I drove away from Alder Ridge, a decision was forming. Quietly, steadily, with the same precision I once reserved for investigations. If they truly believed I had nothing, tomorrow would show me exactly what that meant. What I discovered the next day, buried beneath years of unspoken assumptions, would push me toward a choice that neither Aaron nor Selena ever imagined I could make. The next morning, the cold still clung to my bones, but it wasn't the weather that lingered with me. It was the way Aaron had looked through me at dinner, as if my existence needed apologizing for. As if the man who raised him, fed him, sheltered him, taught him everything from tying shoelaces to filing taxes was now an inconvenience. I made coffee in my tiny apartment, a ritual that grounded me. The steam curled upward as I opened a fresh document on my laptop. Habit. My career had conditioned me to document everything: dates, conversations, tone, implication, patterns, inconsistencies, truths people hid even from themselves. I titled it simply, Alder Ridge Dinner. Observations. I wrote everything while it was still fresh. Their comments, their glances, the way Teresa winced when I unfolded the metal chair, the way Rowan spoke to me like a man reviewing a loan applicant, the way Selena eyed my coat like it carried a stain she couldn't scrub out of her reputation, and above all, the way Aaron sat silent, using my humility as a shield from embarrassment rather than a reflection of his upbringing. When I finished writing, the document spanned several pages. It didn't anger me. It clarified. I leaned back in my chair, eyeing the sparse apartment. People assumed modest surroundings meant modest resources. They never considered that some of us chose simplicity for purpose, not out of necessity. But the real truth was that I hadn't chosen it to simplify my life. I'd chosen it to strengthen his, and he had no idea. My phone vibrated at noon. Aaron, I answered. Yes? Dad, I just wanted to check if you got home all right. His voice sounded strained, like someone had coached him into sounding concerned. I did. A pause. You know, Selena's parents didn't mean anything last night. They just, well, they say things sometimes. They said exactly what they meant, I replied. And so did you. His tone sharpened. I didn't say anything. That was the problem, Aaron. Silence. Heavy enough to confirm what we both knew. He hadn't defended me because he didn't want to be associated with me. Not the version of me he thought existed. He cleared his throat. Look, Dad, about the down payment. We're short. A lot. And I'm aware. We were hoping, just hoping, that maybe you could contribute. A little. Anything, really. Aaron, I said softly, what makes you think I have that kind of money? His answer was immediate. Too immediate. Because you don't. I closed my eyes for a moment. There it was. The assumption, the conviction, the belief he clung to, that his father was a man who could only give love, not resources. A man beneath the level he wanted to climb to. All right, I said, thank you for calling. That's it? Yes. Goodbye, Aaron. I hung up before he could fumble through another justification. I set the phone down, folded my hands, and stared at the document I'd typed. I'd spent years teaching people through investigations that truth wasn't what they said. It was how they behaved when they thought no one was watching. Aaron had shown me the truth. Now I needed to decide what to do with it. By late afternoon, I'd made up my mind. The first step wasn't dramatic, not like the courtroom scenes people imagine when they think of decisive moments. No, I began by pulling out a locked metal box from beneath my bed. Inside were folders, bank statements, investment summaries, the deed to the house where Aaron and Selena lived rent-free for nearly 8 years. 8 years of no rent, 8 years of free stability, 8 years of opportunity, 8 years they'd treated as something they deserved, not something they were gifted. I sorted through the documents, placing them into organized piles. I felt not anger, not sadness, something colder, resolute. This wasn't retaliation. It was correction. For years I'd allowed Aaron to live in comfort while believing he'd built it himself, but he never built anything. He borrowed everything, my home, my generosity, my silence, and perhaps my silence had been the problem. That night I drafted an email to an attorney whose name I'd kept bookmarked for years, long before any of this began, a man known for thorough estate planning and ironclad documentation. The message was brief. I need to update my will and amend the deed to my property. It concerns my son. I want it handled discreetly and efficiently. I hit send. My cursor blinked at the bottom of the screen, a steady reminder that decisions, real decisions, did not belong to moments of rage, but moments of clarity. And for the first time in years, I felt completely, undeniably clear, because the next steps would reveal a side of life Iran had never experienced. Consequences. But nothing could have prepared me for the meeting that followed, where a single conversation with my attorney shifted this entire story into something far more final than Aaron ever expected. The attorney's office sat on the 5th floor of an older brick building overlooking the Spokane River. I'd walked past it countless times over the years, always intending to go inside someday, but never actually stepping through the door. That morning, though, I didn't hesitate. The elevator's slow hum felt like a countdown, one I had already made peace with. The receptionist greeted me with a practiced smile. "Mr. Graydon, Mr. Kellen will see you now." I followed her into a conference room lit by wide windows. Sunlight bounced off the long wooden table, highlighting the neat stacks of legal folders. Behind them sat the man I'd contacted, Orrin Kellen, a state lawyer with a reputation for precision, discretion, and ironclad documentation. He stood and extended his hand. "Mr. Graydon, thank you for coming. I reviewed your email. You mentioned this concerns your son?" "Yes," I said, taking a seat. "And the future of what I've built." His expression remained neutral, professional. "Then let's take this step by step. Tell me exactly what you want to accomplish." I opened the leather folder I'd brought and slid several documents toward him. Bank summaries, investment statements, property deed, and a brief written account of the dinner at Alder Ridge. Factual, emotionless, and detailed. "I need 2 things," I said. "A new will, and a binding arrangement to prevent my son from inheriting the house he currently lives in." Kellen skimmed the notes, nodding occasionally. "And to confirm, your current will leaves everything to him?" "Yes." "And you want to remove him entirely?" "Yes." He didn't flinch at the bluntness. "It's absolutely legal. Washington allows full disinheritance of adult children. As long as your intention is clear and the documentation is thorough, it cannot be undone." I felt no relief, only a quiet, steady certainty. He continued, "Tell me why you're choosing this path. Not in emotional terms, just facts." So I explained. The 8 years Iran and Selena lived rent-free in the house. The complete lack of appreciation. The way they spent almost everything they earned while building an image they thought impressive. The humiliation at dinner, the down payment assumption. The silence when I was insulted. Kellen took notes quickly, efficiently. "Your reasoning is coherent and consistent. This will stand." He drafted a preliminary outline. A will naming a beneficiary other than Aaron. A recorded declaration of intention. A transfer on death deed for the house. A statement documenting my ongoing competence, all procedural, all logical. But then he set his pen down and folded his hands. "There's one thing I need to ask. Are you doing this to punish him? Or to protect your estate from misuse?" I met his eyes. "I'm doing this because he failed a test of character. And because giving him money now would guarantee he never learns the lessons he avoided his entire adult life." Kellen nodded. "Then everything you're asking is not only legal, it's sound." He turned the page. "Have you decided who will receive your assets instead?" "Yes." I handed him a printed list of 3 organizations: local scholarship foundations, youth apprenticeship programs, and a regional nonprofit that supported teens aging out of foster care. "I want it to go to people who actually need it," I said. "People who appreciate opportunity because they've never had any handed to them." Kellen exhaled quietly, almost respectfully. "You're not the first father to sit where you're sitting, but you're among the few who come prepared." We spent over an hour reviewing every detail, every clause, every contingency. When we finished, he slid a signature schedule toward me. "These documents will be ready in 10 days. After that, the changes are permanent unless you decide otherwise." I gathered my papers and stood. There was no triumph, no anger, just clarity. Outside, the cold air hit my face. I walked along the river path, watching the water curl around the rocks like it had somewhere important to go. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Aaron. "Dad, can we talk? Selena thinks we should all sit down together." I stared at the screen. The message wasn't about concern, it wasn't even about me. It was about the house, the money, the opportunity he thought he deserved. I didn't reply. Instead, I slipped the phone back into my coat and kept walking, my steps steady. Because the next conversation we had wouldn't be about reconciliation. It would be about truth. But before that conversation happened, Aaron made a move I hadn't expected. One that forced everything into the open far sooner than I planned. I didn't hear from Aaron again for nearly a week. Not a call, not a message, nothing. The silence was predictable. Whenever faced with something uncomfortable, he tended to retreat into whatever story made him feel safest. I assumed he was waiting for Selena to decide their next move. She'd always been the strategist between them. But on the 7th morning, as I was leaving my apartment for work, I found a white envelope taped to my door, my name written across the front in Aaron's hurried handwriting. No return address, no greeting. Inside, a letter. 2 full pages. Dad, I know things have been tense. I know you feel I didn't defend you at dinner, and you're right. I should have. I've been thinking about it a lot. Selena and I want to meet, please. We want to fix this. If you're willing, can we talk tonight? Aaron. It might have been sincere if I hadn't recognized the tone. This wasn't remorse. This was panic. The kind that comes when someone realizes they may lose something they assumed was guaranteed. Still, I folded the letter neatly and slipped it into my jacket pocket. I didn't reply. By the time I arrived at the office, the decision weighed heavier. I spent most of the day reviewing compliance files, routine, methodical. But my mind drifted repeatedly to that letter. Not because it changed anything, but because it confirmed I'd made the right choice. People fight hardest for things they never earned. Just after dusk, as I stepped off the elevator back at my building, I saw a familiar figure in the lobby. Aaron, sitting on the edge of a vinyl chair, elbows on his knees, wringing his hands like a child awaiting punishment. He stood when he saw me. Dad, please, can we talk? Right now? He wasn't dressed like the polished son-in-law he usually performed as. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair unstyled. His eyes carried exhaustion. I hesitated. Then I nodded. 10 minutes. He exhaled with visible relief and followed me up to my apartment. Once inside, he didn't sit. He paced, back and forth, back and forth. The silence stretched. Finally, he spoke. Selena's dad found out something that you talked to a lawyer. I didn't answer. Aaron swallowed hard. They think you're changing your will, cutting me out. Still, I said nothing. So I went by the house, he continued. A notice was posted on the door, something about updates with the county records. He paused. Dad, have you changed something? I looked at him fully now. Yes. He flinched like I'd struck him. Why? His voice cracked, threaded with disbelief. Why would you do that? Because of one dinner? Because of something Selena said? That's not fair. That dinner didn't create your behavior, I said quietly. It revealed it. Aaron blinked rapidly. I didn't defend you, I know, but I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just embarrassed. There it was. The truth, unfiltered. You were embarrassed of me. He closed his eyes. Not of you, just how things might look. I let the words settle. Heavy, ugly, honest. He kept talking, voice fraying. I don't understand why you're suddenly doing all of this. You're not like this. You're calm, practical. You don't cut people off. Correct, I said. I don't. Unless they show me they've already let go of me. His eyes widened. Dad, that's not fair. Fairness, I replied, is not shielding a grown man from the consequences of how he treats people. He sank into a chair, deflated. Selena's parents think you're unreliable, that you're bitter. They're pushing me to fight this legally. And will you? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. His silence was an answer. I leaned forward. Aaron, let me explain something you've refused to see for years. Every sacrifice I made, every choice to live simply, every worn jacket, every old car was intentional. I wanted you to grow independent, responsible, kind. I am, he whispered. I shook my head. No. You became someone who values image over gratitude, comfort over character, validation over humility. That's not independence. That's entitlement. He covered his face with both hands. Dad, I can change. Aaron, I said gently, you're not 18. You're in your 30s. Change isn't impossible, but it doesn't erase what's been shown. For a long moment, he didn't speak. When he finally lifted his head, his expression was raw. Selena doesn't want me to leave the house. She said it's ours, that you wouldn't dare take it back. It isn't hers, I replied, and it isn't yours. She's threatening to get a lawyer. She can, I said calmly. It won't change anything. He stared at me with a mixture of disbelief and desperation. So that's it? You're really doing this? Yes. He sagged back into the chair, defeated. I thought I had time. I thought you'd always just wait. That, I said quietly, is exactly the problem. Aaron closed his eyes again, absorbing the weight of a truth he'd never imagined I could enforce. But what happened next? The action they took the following week would show me that the real fight hadn't even begun. The following week passed in an odd quiet, too quiet. I'd expected calls, messages, maybe even a confrontation from Selena's family. Instead, there was nothing but a stillness that felt unnatural, like the air right before a storm breaks open. The storm arrived in the form of a certified letter. I recognized the embossed seal the moment I opened my mailbox. Leclerc and Morvan, the law firm Rowan used for business disputes and real estate acquisitions. Impressive on paper, aggressive in practice. Inside, a challenge to my updated estate documents, a formal objection claiming diminished capacity, sudden uncharacteristic behavior, and family instability. It was almost humorous how predictable it was. I scanned the pages twice, then slipped them back into the envelope and walked up to my apartment. My coffee was still warm when I emailed Orrin Kellen a scan of the documents. He called within 10 minutes. They don't have a case, he said. They're throwing noise at you, it won't stick. I assumed as much. They're trying to intimidate you into compromising. My advice? Don't respond directly. Let us handle it formally. I agreed. It wasn't even a decision. The more they pushed, the more they confirmed my reasoning. But I'll admit, part of me wondered what was happening behind the scenes. I imagined the arguments, the panic, the sudden realization that the father they'd ignored might not have been the powerless man they'd believed. 3 days later, the second move arrived. A message from Aaron. Dad, please. Can you talk to me? Just 5 minutes. I don't want this in court. Selena's parents are pushing this too far. Please call me. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed, then turned the phone face down. The next morning, I stopped by Orrin's office to sign a set of responses for the court. Nothing dramatic, just procedural documentation confirming my competence and verifying the timeline of my decision. When we finished, Orrin leaned back and studied me. You're calm, he said. Most people in your position would be shaking. I've worked in investigations for over 30 years, I replied. People panic when they're guilty. People get angry when they're entitled. But people who know the truth? I shrugged. They stay steady. He smiled. This will resolve quickly. And it did. 2.5 weeks later, we stood before a judge who spent no more than 10 minutes reviewing the filings before dismissing the challenge entirely. The reasoning was simple. I was competent. The changes were deliberate. The documentation was thorough. And most importantly, adult children are not entitled to inherit. I didn't look at Aaron when the judge gave the ruling. I didn't need to. I could feel the air shift beside me. A deflation of hope, pride, and denial all at once. Outside the courtroom, Aaron followed me into the hallway. Dad, don't walk away, please. I turned to him. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, emotionally. His shoulders sagged, his voice trembled, his eyes were red. I didn't think you'd really do it, he whispered. That's why it had to be done. He nodded slowly. The hall was silent except for his uneven breathing. Selena's leaving, he finally said. Her parents are furious. They said I failed. They said I should have convinced you. I met his eyes. And did you think you could? He gave a fragile, broken laugh. I thought I could talk you out of it. I thought you'd never follow through. That, I said gently, was the problem from the beginning. He swallowed hard. Dad, I know I hurt you. And I know I can't undo any of it. But I don't want to lose you completely. I let the silence stretch long enough for both of us to feel its weight. You haven't lost me, I finally said. But the version of me who protected you from consequences, that man is gone. Aaron wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and nodded. I understand. He didn't ask for money. Didn't ask for the house. Didn't ask for a second chance at inheritance. For the first time in years, he asked for nothing but my presence. It didn't erase what had happened, but it was something real. more real than any polished dinner table or curated reputation. We walked out of the courthouse together, though not side by side. A measured distance remained, and perhaps it always would. But the silence between us felt different now. Not hostile, not performative, just honest. In the months that followed, my life eased back into its steady rhythm. Work, quiet evenings, walks by the river. I donated the house sale proceeds to 3 organizations exactly as planned. Their letters of gratitude felt genuine, meaningful. And as for Aaron, he moved into a modest apartment across town. Not luxurious, not humiliating, just real. He started calling once a week. Short conversations, nothing dramatic, but respectful, intentional. He was learning the very lesson I had spent half my life hoping he'd someday understand. Dignity isn't inherited, it's built. And I suppose in a way we were both rebuilding something slowly, carefully, honestly. Not the same as before, but maybe something truer. And if you've been listening this far, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It helps more than you know.